You are listening to the Icehouse Podcast, hosting conversations with gritty Kiwi business owners and leaders and industry-leading minds.
Kia ora everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Icehouse Podcast. My name is Bryar, and it's such a privilege to be having these conversations with Icehouse alumni, hearing their stories and journeys and getting to know them a little bit better. Alex Haden is on the podcast today. He is the Managing Director of Preston Rowe Paterson, a leading group of property valuers and consultants that are changing the face of valuation. We recorded this conversation in Tauranga in their offices and had an in-depth chat about his career journey, the huge impact the Icehouse has had on him as an individual and leader, the opportunities for growth within his business model, the takeaways from owner-manager program, and how he wished he did it sooner. I actually hear that quite a lot. Hey, I think you'll really enjoy this conversation. We'll jump into it now. Thanks, Alex, for being with us.
Morning, Bryar. Thank you for having me.
It's nice. It's a good morning.
My very first podcast.
Very first podcast. I always like that. It's good fun. I promise I won't be too mean. But nice morning here in Tauranga, and as always, that's a good way to put it, as always. But we like to start the podcast with a nice open question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. Yeah, so outside work, I'm a husband to Claire and dad to Richie, Ella and Abby. The kids are only 5, 3 and 1, so that really influences my life and keeps me really busy. It's a busy work environment and a busy personal environment. So
busy, yeah.
But yeah, at work here, I'm the Managing Director of Preston Rowe Paterson. We're a valuation company, and a busy one at that. So life is pretty busy, but I love it that way. I'd certainly prefer that than the alternative. So between those two things, that sums up the vast majority of my life.
Yeah. Whew, busy. That's cool. And I like what you said there. You wouldn't have it any other way. It's great. On that, you mentioned life is busy. What does a day in the life of Alex look like?
Sure. So pre-Icehouse, it was probably pre-Icehouse and pre-kids, to be honest, because they happened relatively close to one another. I took liberties in terms of on myself. I would work a lot harder. I would sort of put myself second, whereas I've got different commitments now. So I guess some of the disciplines that I learnt from Icehouse have been really valuable through this next phase of life. I'm an early starter now. I'm up at 5 o'clock, so as to buy time at the end of the day to spend time with the family. But I'm mostly office bound. But that said, my job is now, it's not about being on the tools, it's more about relationships. So I'm a lot more out in the community and building the repute of our firm so that we can continue to grow and achieve our goals.
That's brilliant. I love that perspective too, pre and post the Icehouse and what that taught you.
That's honestly how I feel.
Wow.
I'd be one of the bigger advocates for it. And lots of people told me pre-Icehouse that it was going to be life-changing, and I don't know if it's not cynicism, but I guess you just thought, well, is it really? But yeah, there's so many themes that came from it that made life a whole lot more manageable, but as much as more manageable, but equally successful as well, because I could achieve and be relevant in the things that I was doing.
Yes.
So those are I really would be a strong advocate for it, but first to admit that I was a bit of a cynic at the outset and didn't know that it was going to be as positive as what it was for me. So life has definitely changed, but the early starts and the being more disciplined at work, I enjoy it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I look back at life pre-Icehouse, having the young kids and things, and I think it was fine, pretty indulgent, but it was pretty inefficient. And as a business, for example, we weren't going to prosper like I think we have and will continue to because of those disciplines that you learn. So it's great.
I love that. That's amazing to hear. First of all, that it's had such an impact in your life, but also just going, in a way, having kids and has brought efficiency to your life, and the Icehouse sort of helped you navigate how to really lock those efficiencies in. Yeah.
Which is not to say I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and the purists would look at some of the things we do here at work and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing this, but equally it's always learning, and we're on a path to improve, and I'm on a personal path to improve. So I just know that I wouldn't have found it as easy were it not for those disciplines that I learned.
So interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I get a feeling you have worked here for a while. It came up in convo before. How's the journey looked for you in terms of now being managing director?
So I'm one of the few people that you'd meet who is still in the same firm that they started with, fresh from university.
Wow.
I've been doing it for 26 years now.
Wow.
So I literally started as a valuer. I wasn't registered. As a valuer, you do 3 years of experience before you can apply to be registered. So I started out as green as could be, and just knocking out lots and lots of valuations. And through a product of time and I guess natural attrition as people retire and what have you, I won't say it was as a result of my natural leadership style or anything like that, but I've become not the most senior in age, I'll be the first to point that out, but become the managing director. And that's one of the things that drove me to Icehouse, is that you can spend a lot of time and have a lot of experience in something, but it doesn't make you a leader of people or a leader of a business.
Yes.
So that's I was conscious that as the business grew, and it had grown quite a lot, it was a whole lot more seat of your pants and gut instinct rather than actually having good considered approaches to things and being really conscious of some of the disciplines that we should have. So that was one of the things that pushed me towards Icehouse, because I just knew that I couldn't keep going and just relying on gut feel as I did. You needed to have some of those, some people don't. Some people are natural leaders, I suppose, but I wasn't that person. I think I'm good with people, but there's a whole lot of disciplines that come with the Icehouse course. It's multifaceted, I suppose. It's the personal side, it's the business side, it's they talk about the trilogy of you and the business and the business, and those are the things that I've learnt. So 26 years, it's a lot of time. Well, it's my only job, but equally I needed to have gotten some of the skills that fitted the role that I had landed in through time.
So you feel like leadership for you has been a learnt skill rather than a natural thing?
Very much so, yeah. I think I'm honest to the core, and I always treat me and the staff well, and I suppose that instinct has helped. Like, that grew us to a certain point.
Yes.
And I do, as a product of time, have a feel for this business. You can't not after 26 years. So I suppose those two things helped us to get so far, but equally you can't just have a gut feel on how everyone's going when there's 20-something staff. You just, there's people whose roles you won't touch on a daily basis, and you may not even be involved with on a weekly basis. So to have some better disciplines and I guess tiers of management through the business, those sort of disciplines of scale. We're still a small business, obviously, but as you get bigger, you just can't be all over it. So again, those techniques help that as well.
That's so interesting. Did you ever feel as a leader, going off script a bit, but it was hard because you wanted to sort of be engaged with all of the people, but you just didn't have the personal capacity?
Yep. That definitely is a tension, and it still is, because I'm probably more inclined to be that, and I often get to the end of the day and you've put out fires or helped people along the way. And I regard myself as the facilitator of the business, making sure that people don't have lots of tension in their day so they can effectively be productive and produce valuations. But I often got to the end of the day and thought, gee, that's great, but I actually haven't done any of my jobs. I haven't done the focus on the business, because I'm conscious that I can try and rush out and write vals. I can try and build relationships and what have you, look after all our staff, but it actually hasn't grown the business per se. It's not actually advancing our strategy. And because strategy isn't something that's natural to me, it's something I've I guess had to learn some of those disciplines, then it's easy to resort to type, which was my looking after the team, making sure they're all productive, which is, again, great. But you've got to know how to prioritise. Well, that's the thing I've learned, is you've got to know how to prioritise your time so that you're steering the ship forward in the best way, rather than, everyone can love what's going on, but it doesn't actually get the ship moving in the right direction. So learn to delegate and to give people a bit of a bit of take their own initiative, I suppose, rather than mollycoddling them too much.
Which long term they will be very thankful for.
Very much so.
Because people enjoy being part of a company that has that long term vision and can see the ship moving forward. And that totally makes sense. And I love how self-aware you are. You know your strengths and your weaknesses.
Plenty of weaknesses.
Or the work-ons. No, it's
true.
cool. For those that are going, okay, cool, but what do you guys offer as a business? What do you do? Do you mind just giving a quick insight into that?
Sure, because a lot of people don't actually know what valuers do.
Yeah.
Other than, you're producing valuation reports, but so we're based here in Tauranga City. We service the Western Bay of Plenty, or that's traditionally been our background. We provide valuation reports for a multitude of reasons, whether it be for refinancing purposes. That's often the case. You're buying a property, the bank wants to know what security that property holds, and so we are the person who provides that information.
Cool.
It might be for taxation purposes, it might be financial reporting, it might be for separation. There needs to be an asset, all the assets in that relationship get valued. There's so many different ways and means whereby we could assist people. The niche area that we probably haven't expanded into is just straight consultancy. You've got a problem, or you've got a property that has a problem. We want to be the people who can help you solve that problem, and it's a non-traditional area of valuation, but it's something that we think, we've got a lot of knowledge in this, but I feel like we probably try and step out of the norm and just do different offerings. But equally, you become entrenched and people recognise you as just being a valuer of properties, and it's trying to make that market awareness to go to us for different things other than just a straight valuation.
Yes, that's very interesting. So you would do valuations for the everyday home and commercial and the whole lot?
So we're multifaceted in terms of we've got a resi and lifestyle valuation team, commercial and rural. But within those, we're trying to expand our respective offerings. So in this area here, for example, kiwi fruit's a big part.
Huge.
So we've got one of my shareholders is become really specialist, probably I think best in the country at kiwi fruit valuations. But there's other niche areas within the agri sector that we haven't pushed into traditionally. So we're trying to become more a complete offering to all the different sectors. We're trying to provide a more complete offering, so that if we're looking after you and your properties, then it's not like we do these ones for you, but you have to go elsewhere for others.
They can come to you for the whole service, and
and that's a personality thing. Well, sorry, that's a personnel thing, making sure you got the right people on board. But equally, it's a market awareness, because you can get those people on board and no one knows about it. So we're trying to build that capacity within the business, as well as the awareness with our clients that we can do a lot more than what they might have pigeonholed us as being able to do a few years ago.
Very interesting. Okay, cool.
And it's also a wider service offering, because we've made a decision that with this town, as much as we love it, the traffic's getting worse, as you well appreciate. We're trying to now provide a commutable service area. So we've now pushed into the Whakatane, Opotiki, Rotorua, and we're considering going over the Kaimais to the eastern Waikato as well, because there's a whole lot of towns that are crying out for valuation work over there, but we just, I guess we put it in haven't done it before, so we won't bother, but there is opportunity there too, so we're quite keen to do that.
It's exciting. It sounds like there's a lot of avenues to grow the business and continue the good work you guys do. With all that in mind, for you personally, what gets you out of bed in the morning beyond your kids probably? What I mean by that is, what drives you within the business?
I've got a pretty strong work ethic, and I always have. One thing that one of my business owners or business partners talks about is debt is quite a big motivator. And we've got plenty of that. We've bought some commercial properties of late, and debt is quite a motivating factor, because and it's also this business, I just know in my core that it can be so much better than what it is right now. So that's one of the, again, an Icehouse learning, is you look at it where you are and say, oh, that's it's going okay. But when you really start to look at it on high and reflect on your position in the market, we can so easily see how much better this could be.
Yes.
And so achieving those goals and some of the strategy that we've set ourselves, that's a really motivating factor. So I would say that we're probably writing checks on us as shareholders that we can't continue to cash.
Yeah.
We're working pretty hard and have done for a long time, and you can put it down to that COVID challenging period and that post-COVID time, and when the property market went mad.
Yes.
We've now got some of the debt pressures, so I won't say that what we're doing right now is sustainable, but equally I think as shareholders we're quite aligned and we all have quite a strong work ethic, so we're motivated to be a success, and so those are the things that drive us. But equally, personally, I'm motivated to support my family and to be there for them as much as I can. So as much as I enjoy being at work and I enjoy the challenge, I'm keen to get out of here when I can, just to spend time with them.
Yeah, so important. Yeah, that's great. This is an interesting one, especially with the perspective that you've been in the one job. This is a job that you left uni and came into. What piece of advice would you give your younger self?
I reflected on this earlier. The two things that I've written, one's a little bit light-hearted, but learn to type. I didn't, and at Tauranga Boys College you literally had no option to do that, so it would make my life so much easier now. But
call.
Also spend more time setting a course for yourself, a plan. I was one of those people, and again that's my norm, I guess you'd say, is just get stuck in and do it, rather than actually having sitting down, having a bit of a think, where do we want to get to? And so that one of the things that was at the conference this year, one of the themes that resonated with me, and I haven't got the exact wording, but don't mistake busyness for productivity or something along those lines.
Yes.
And I was a classic for that. I'd go to work, get stuck in for the whole day, leave work at whatever time and think, great, done the job, but you actually haven't been as effective as what you could be. So that's one of the big things for me. If I had have slowed up a little bit, had a bit of a reflection on where we wanted to get to, and make a solid plan for it. So those are two things. One's lighthearted, again, the typing, but in terms of the business side, I needed to be a little bit more goals focused rather than just get stuck in.
Totally. And I think so many people, that would be something for them. You're in the groove, you're getting things done, you're busy, but how often do we take the time to stop to think, is this the direction I'm wanting to head in? Okay, how can I be doing this in a more efficient way? Yeah, totally. Great advice. How has the industry evolved over the years? Any emerging trends that have stuck out to you?
Sure. When I started, a valuation report was about 5 pages long. And a valuation report these days, even for just a house, it'd be the thick end of 50 pages often.
Yes.
They're arguably too involved, but our end users now want us to sell a story. It effectively needs to be self-explanatory to anyone. Whereas in days gone by, or when I first started, you could write it on an envelope, just effectively write a number, and that was it. You had your signature and a number, that was all that was really relevant.
Wow.
So it really is about conveying a story as to how you've reached the number that you've landed at. So the trick to that is becoming efficient and producing a report that's 50 pages long. That's part of the reason why we've moved to this brand PRP. They've got a whole lot more technology that allows us to be efficient in the production of reports. But this industry, I'd be the first to say that it's not progressive by any stretch. It's there's been that traditional valuation offering of it's got to be a valuation or that's it. There is no wavering from that. So I think there's massive change afoot. It hasn't happened in this country just yet, but I think it will come. There's like an aggregation, a drive to aggregation that's happened in Australia that will happen here. Things like access to professional indemnity insurance. It's not easy to get these days, and it's massively expensive. So to be part of a larger brand that gives you, and with good risk mitigation systems in place, it gives you the opportunity to get those PI policies. You have the data protection mechanisms within our system that means that you're not exposing people's private information.
Yes.
A whole lot of those drivers to aggregation, I think, are happening in this industry, but it's very much a cottage industry. It's the 1 and 2 man band type things. That's how it's been, but that's not the way of the future. I can see that a mile away. So we are pleased to have come on board with the brand that we have, as much as there's been challenges with it, but it gives us a good position to take advantages of the changes that I think will happen even more so in valuation.
That's really interesting and very honest about the industry that you're, and where it sits. This may be a dumb question, but I'm wondering, because when we purchased our home, is valuing a property different to the property report in terms of, there's a leak here, and is that two different things?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay,
yeah. So
interesting.
ours is valuation.
Yes.
You got to look at the asset itself and describe it in the context of where it sits in the market.
Yes.
People would the critics of valuation would say that we're looking into the future facing backwards, because we rely on historical evidence. Primarily, if it's a house you're talking about, it's comparable sales. It's this property sold for X, this property sold for Y.
Yeah.
They compare to this the subject property in this way, and therefore we see that it's worth X amount. The property inspection report, the building inspection report you're referring to, is just the physical building itself.
Yes.
Does it meet the building code? Is it is there deferred maintenance that may not be obvious to people? So they are very different in that respect.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah. No, that's cool. And so you would look at areas as well and go, this is an up and coming area, makes sense. That's cool.
Well, to the extent that it's driven by market forces, I suppose. Like you're aware of the big picture. Like there's a motorway going through here, there's some planning changes afoot, those things that are going to change the potential of that property. But yeah, to the extent, things like view, people often ask us, how do you value a view? Well, a view feels intangible, but when you look at market evidence, you can say, well, that property had a similar view, that sold for X amount. So you can we analyse every sale that we look at into the different parts, the land part, the building part. You can quite easily isolate where the market sees that value in a view, whether that be on Ocean Beach Road or whether that be in Mongatapu or wherever.
Yes.
It feels intangible, but by looking at evidence, there is actually it's not that tricky to do.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for clarifying that for me. Any advice for those that are looking to invest into, the real estate market, or particularly in the current climate we're in?
It's really hard right now. It's hard for just getting access to finance, if nothing else. Like, you can have all the will in the world, which is great, but people with good reason right now are a little bit cautious because there is plenty of economic headwinds.
Yes.
In some ways, I look at it and say that if you can make something stack up in this environment, then you're going to be great in the longer term, because interest rates are pretty high right now, and I think, today's official cash rate outcome will be interesting in itself, but I think we've reached pretty much the high point in the interest rate cycle, and the likelihood is that in time that will soften. So if you can make something stack up, again, very difficult, but if you can, then you're probably onto a good thing.
Yes.
But just be cautious. Do your due diligence. You don't have to rush. There's less purchases around. There's relatively a relative abundance, I suppose, of vendors. So don't feel like you need to knee-jerk.
Yeah.
That's not
Good
suggesting you
advice.
necessarily need to have a valuation done, but getting some advice around, if it was a commercial property, what's the lease structures like? What is your tenant security? The physical property itself. There's lots of parts that you should be looking at pretty carefully, because it's a tough market right now.
That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Changing gears a little bit to chat about the Icehouse program. First of all, how did you actually hear about the program in the first place?
I was on a yacht off Great Barrier Island with a good friend of mine, Ewan Armstrong, who
Yes.
was an early OMPer, I don't know what number, but a long time before, which is a
Yes.
problem. I should have listened. He said, you'd be mad not to do it. It'd be the best thing you ever did. It'll pay for itself in the first year in terms of what it does to your business.
Wow.
Those things are so true, but I looked at it and said, oh, maybe not, or it's too big a commitment and time and costs, all those sort of things.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, I didn't do it immediately, but that's where I heard about it, and I suppose you could see how enthused that he was and the changes that it had made, but I just naturally looked at it and thought, it's going to, my business is too small, or maybe it's not for me, or whatever. Like, you have your self-doubts,
Totally.
and those things, I certainly had them, and so I regret it now, because I ought to have listened, but didn't.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So what was the catalyst then for going, okay, I'm going to jump on it?
So, that's a good question, actually. What the actual thing was. We actually, we as a business were changing banks,
Yes.
and we moved to BNZ Bank, and they had been trying to get us to move over for quite a long time. And one of the sweeteners they offered was a contribution to the Icehouse course, the
Yes.
OMP course.
Great.
And I suppose it got it back in front of mind. It had always sat there in the background as being an opportunity, but I didn't. Again, it didn't deliver on it. I suppose that put it front of mind. And as a business shareholding, we'd made a decision. We wanted to change premises. We wanted to grow. There was a whole lot of things bubbling away in the business that you thought, I want to take advantage of as well.
Interesting.
So I suppose they all came together and made me think, gee, maybe it is the right time. Yeah, those are probably the main things. But for the barriers, the cost, the time, those things were all real.
Yes.
The bank giving a bit of support to it, but probably more so my shareholders. They were really supportive of it, the time commitment and the cost commitment as well. So
Yeah, great.
I think it was just a collection of those factors that made me jump on.
Jump in. Yeah, that's very cool. And yes, BNZ are awesome partners that definitely help, like you said, bring it front to mind for a lot of business owners and make it sort of a no-brainer in some ways. It's definitely a great offering. And also very real hesitations. We definitely hear a lot. The cost is definitely a factor. The time taken out of a business is definitely a factor. But it's good to hear that, many people say that it's, pays itself back very fast and brings a lot of value. So it's good to hear.
I would, I felt like we would be one of the smaller businesses to have done OMP. I think at the time, our turnover was something in the order of 2.5 million, whereas there were some massive businesses. And I looked at the alumni and I thought, gee, I'm not really in that realm of the calibre of the owners of them, but also the businesses themselves. And I thought, gee, they may pay for themselves in no time. But with a little business like ours, maybe not. But it very easily looks after itself. And just the disciplines, and I just know moving forward that is such a small investment for the learnings that I've had from it.
I do hear that often in terms of, rocking up on the first day, feeling like it's your first day of school all over again, going, okay, trying to work everyone out. But just how easily you then click and realise, okay, we may be different businesses, but we do go through the same challenges.
Exactly right. That's the big thing, is that they're not valuation businesses. I never expected to see valuation businesses, but they've all got the same challenges, but just in a slightly different way.
So interesting.
And they're good people, and it sometimes feels lonely when you're sitting in the seat. You think, well, no one can really help me, but then you build a little community around you who are quite happy to help out.
What does that look like for you post-program, that community feel?
The Icehouse community, look, we went to the conference this year. Quite a few of our group went to conference this year, and it was great to connect with them again. We had big aspirations of, taking a trip away every year, but time gets in the way of that, and people are busy. So we haven't connected as much as what I think we thought we would. The relationships are still strong. We still have a WhatsApp group. We're still communicating with one another.
Yeah.
But I just know that if the opportunity arose and you needed to bounce an idea off of one of the people in the group, or it might be that I'm doing something that's related to their industry.
Yes.
I was able to help someone from my group who's down in Wellington with a property transaction that they were involved in, and it was a great feeling that they felt they could reach out to me, and I knew that I could help them. So yeah, it's great.
That's very cool. It's always amazing to hear, especially those, cohorts that have been around, for years, just the ups and downs in business, whether it was the global financial crisis or, COVID, obviously. That WhatsApp group or that email chain or, that group of people that you've gone through the owner manager program with are some of the first people that that they end up reaching out to because they really truly get it. And I think even in a conversation I had last week, sometimes family and friends that don't own their own businesses, as much as they're great to bounce ideas off and share things, they just don't quite understand.
Context, no.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great to have that community.
That was one of the things that came as a surprise to me post-course. I thought that you'd do the OMP and that's it. You'd be... the 50s are gone effectively, and they do what they... if they want to connect with one another from that point on, that's fine. And the facilitators, they did sort of say, this is a community that you're part of now and that we want to keep re-engaging with you. And to be honest with you, I thought it was sort of making it up, but it is real.
Cool.
The conference is a great example of that. There were so many good refreshers. The speakers were engaging. They were, you knew that they were in your position, albeit the businesses were different. They'd had all the same challenges, and it just reinvigorated me. So
great to hear.
it is, and it's an annual thing, and it's not just that. There's other opportunities as well. So
Yeah.
that for the facilitators, you could contact them if you needed something as well.
Yes.
So it's so good.
That is really cool to hear. I love that. In terms of, you mentioned right at the start, pre and post the Icehouse, in terms of how you structured, how you work. From that sort of takeaways element, what was a key takeaway for you, maybe in your personal world or your professional world?
So, look, the ways that the course has changed me hugely, like just in every aspect of my life, to be perfectly honest. I'm a lot healthier. Sven Hansen has, as much as I didn't, I thought this guy's too good to be true and it can't be legit. You don't have to be Sven, but there's a whole lot of disciplines that can come with. So,
Brilliant.
getting up nice and early in the morning, exercising regularly. I drink a lot less than what I used to. I still like a drink, don't get me wrong, but equally there's a whole lot more discipline. So I think I'm a better person. My physical self is better, and I think I've got a lot more resilience as a result of that.
Great.
But in terms of the business side, the way I like to think it is I'm more considered now and disciplined. So it's not to say that you don't have a gut feel and that you rely on a little bit of instinct at times, because no one knows everything.
Yes.
But equally, we know the numbers. That's again one of the themes from Icehouse. We didn't, quite frankly. We were a relatively cash flow positive business, and as a smaller business, you kind of had an instinct as to how things sat. Whereas we're now more budget focused. We're budgeting out 2-3 years plus, and knowing what it takes to reach our objectives.
Yeah.
So, and then
Brilliant.
there's accountability that comes from that. So we can get engagement with our team. Here's where our budgets are sitting, and get buy-in, and then share that information. And it's, there's pressure that comes from it in some ways, but equally there's such a good feeling of satisfaction when you achieve what you have set out to do. So we've now got a board advisor as well who keeps me on my toes. So we're setting a strategy, and this guy, he contacts me not in a anything other than a positive way.
Yes.
We talked about getting this done by this date. How you getting on with it? So it's just in my role, I guess I was in some respects unaccountable because there's no one there sort of keeping tabs with me. So it's good to have that first of all, that wisdom from experience. It's great. But just all the parts of the business are now, we're making a decision based on a bit of thought and how's this going to look and knowing the numbers. So it just feels a whole lot more. And I guess we're more engaged with the staff now too. I feel like I hope it's fair to say, are more in tune with where we're going.
Great.
So I couldn't be more of an advocate for the changes that it's had on me.
That's so brilliant to hear. It never gets old for me, to hear the stories of impact on someone's personal and professional life. Like, it's just so important. And that's why I love working for the Icehouse, because I can literally hear how tangible that impact is. But a big theme of what you said there is that accountability piece, actually realizing, okay, I need some accountability being the managing director. How do we keep the team accountable? That's a big piece. And then also, it sounds like the Icehouse allowed you to have that moment of sitting and stopping and going, okay, we need to get our numbers in check. We need to put accountability in place. That moment you talked about earlier in the conversation, that actually stopping is a good thing. Going, are we even heading in the direction we want to head in? It sounds like Icehouse sort of provided that for you, which is cool to hear.
In some ways, we had to go a little bit backwards. We had to spend a bit of money and to get some of these disciplines. Like we've got policies for lots of things where it was a little bit sort of gut feel. We spent a lot of time on the advice around, on the financial side. We've subscribed to packages for our budgeting products, and at the time you think, gee, I'm spending more and more money, but I just know that they're good disciplines to have for the business. So that first year or two afterwards, I felt like we were allowing ourselves to grow and in a controlled way, rather than just being that sort of knee-jerky type gut feel type thing. So in some ways you got to go backwards to go forwards, but and again with the course a little bit as well. You're stepping away from the business, and you could have otherwise been productive in the here and now. Yeah. But in the longer term, it's not. It's not big picture productive. So
creates that sustainability for a company.
Very much so. Yeah.
So important. That's very interesting. To sort of wrap things up a little bit, would love to hear what's next for you and what's next for the business.
As I said earlier, I still think there's massive potential for this business. We've got a great culture, we've got a great bunch of people, but when we reflect a little bit more on the area and our market, it's not well serviced, and I think most valuers, they probably sit in the owners of valuation businesses would sit in the sort of 60 years plus, very much in the cruise control mode, not looking at the opportunity, really want to keep things as it's always been. Like, they don't really want to embrace any change. But we can see from our end users that there's a real appetite for a better quality of report and better advice. So I suppose we've looked at the challenges of this town, and it's looked beyond it and said, we can have valuers who are they physically are based out that way, so it makes more sense for them to service that area. We know there's a demand out that area. There's people who are based, virtually every direction outside of being in the city here. So we think there's a real opportunity to expand our geographical reach as well as our service offering reach. And that while we felt like the business had kind of reached a point of, this is our turnover and we'll never get bigger. When you start to reflect on it a little bit more closely, there's huge opportunity, and the low-hanging fruit that has always sat there, but we just haven't seen it. That's what we firmly believe in now, and it doesn't happen by clicking your fingers. It's going to take time, but we're genuine, and we think that there's a lot bigger opportunity than what it is right now.
That must be so exciting as a managing director to go, cool, we thought we were capped, at a certain amount. But actually, our eyes as a team have been open to these low-hanging fruits that could really, mean that extra growth for us as a company. That's exciting.
Just someone the other day passed a comment about we don't do this much in this part of town, and that gets me thinking, why not? There's a certain part of town that you can feel like you're all things to all people and that you've got a great market share and what have you, and I think we do. But that said, you look at some pockets and go, gee, we could be doing that better, or there's a whole opportunity there, and so that's invigorating that there's that again there's all that low-hanging fruit that you haven't exploited yet, and so how do you strategize to take advantage of it? So we're conscious that it's not just a case of saying we're going to do it and it'll happen. We have to work towards it, but we're on a really strong growth trajectory in a balanced way, because equally the property market is in a delicate phase right now, and there's definitely some headwinds around, but as long as we do it by not just bringing on a whole lot of people without any work to service it, we're going to do it in a controlled way. But as long as we do that, we do think the opportunity exists.
That's exciting. That is very cool to hear. Thank you for sharing your story, the story of the company, and for teaching me a lot about valuation as well. No, I really...
Hope I haven't put you to sleep.
No, absolutely not. It's very interesting and cool to hear just how impactful the Icehouse, program was for you as an individual, as a leader, but also the exciting growth that is in store for this company, and the fact that, essentially you've been in it for 20 plus years. Was it 26 years?
26, yeah.
And now starting to see a whole nother lens of where this business could go. It's an exciting place to be in leadership. So
I'm more enthused than I have been for a long time. So that's a pretty good thing in itself, that you'd normally reach the point where you're starting to show a little bit of wear and tear after that amount of time. But I'm more enthused than ever.
Yeah, which is so great to hear. So this has been the best start to my day. Thank you so much for the conversation, and hope those tuning in enjoyed listening to this inspiring story from an Icehouse alumni. Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bryar.